Hey, welcome to our very first video. My name is Jonathan Ibrahim, and I decided to start a new YouTube channel, a new website, a new everything. And I figured that a introductory video just to who I am and what I'm about and what's going on here and why it matters to you at all. So at some point in the future, when you're watching some of my other content, working through stuff, you have enough context on who I am and where I'm coming from to be able to relate. And I think that's really where the crux of this is. And since it's my first video, might as well showcase, how this channel is most likely going to be structured, which is a lot of these essays, a lot of these sort of live working sessions where I'm going through thoughts, I'm going through ideas, bringing you along and wanting to work with you, regardless of who you are, what level you are at. Being honest about where I am, both developmentally with AI and with my career and with everything else. I think all that's really important, and I think being honest is important. I think being straightforward is important. I think all those things matter, and that's what this channel really represents to me is an opportunity to showcase that. So what is this? This is a big essay. This is how my brain thinks is I put stuff into these sorts of essays and basically showcasing where that structure is coming from. And hopefully the way you see how I think affects how you think and vice versa. And then that way we can create something unique as far as a community called a Scenius. A Scenius. I bring it up at some point here, but there's a great video. Let me see if I can find it. There's this video with Brian Eno. I'm not gonna play it just because it's a little bit might be copyrighted or something like that. But anyways, basically Brian Eno is talking through his ideas on this sort of lone genius that just doesn't exist. Uh, Realistically, geniuses are people who are really putting stuff out there, are part of a community of thinkers and are part of a group of people who are all working towards something. They might be in the middle of it, they might be on the side of it, but I think that they're taking ideas and they're putting together into interesting and unique ways that are then packaged for other people to digest. And you know, uh, he brings up here Picasso and Rembrandt, kind of see here in one of these, but this idea of genius as a individual just isn't reality. It's Scenius. And I think that's something to think about while building this channel is how to build the community around it. So if you're interested in stuff like this, yeah, stick around. I do want to kind of cover, right? One thing you gotta learn if you're gonna learn AI alongside me, not from me, I'm not an AI expert. I'm not a machine learning, MIT grad. But I've been using AI since day one. As soon as ChatGPT launched publicly, I was on it. I was using it every single day. As soon as you could buy a ChatGPT subscription, as soon as Claude Code came out, I was working with it. So, to say that I'm invested in this new technology is definitely true. And the big thing is that the work is honest. I think that's something that at my core is very real for me, which is just being who I am and being truthful and being honest. And I keep trying to produce videos that are just polished, and I always feel like if I just produce the ultimate polished video, that somehow is going to attract other people. And realistically, I don't think I'm ever going to do that. I think there may be a world in which I'm able to create short form reels that are hook based and, hey, comment down below or follow us. I don't know, maybe, but honestly, at this point, it's really difficult for me to think about that and say that that's going to be me. But we're building a Scenius. That's really what I want to do. I want to build something that represents me and the people who value the same things I value and think about problems in the way that I think about them or in ways that are tangentially improving the way I think. And I think that that is going to be hugely beneficial for everything in my life, is to just have other people kind of on that same wavelength. Specifically 1996, age 13. I think this is the wrong year. Thanks, AI. This is a mermaid map, by the way. If you haven't seen it before, it's pretty sweet. It's in Markdown. So here, we'll dive into what all this is, but this is just a Markdown file, and I have Claude code writing these mermaid charts. So these type of specifics sometimes are wrong because I was not 13 in 1996. I was 6 years old in 1996. So this is 2003 is GeoCities. If you haven't seen GeoCities before, I didn't even know if GeoCities was still around or if it was still a thing, but they have this website, and this is just awesome. Like these sorts of just insane websites. This is what I built. These are the types of websites I built. This like straight up HTML, basic websites, inline CSS, like this type of stuff is so nostalgic for me. And it's so, I don't know what it is about it that just makes me like this aesthetic. It's like just millennial early, and look at this, 2003. Man, I hit it right on the head. Like right around this time, this is when GeoCities was huge. And if you ever were a part of this community of just building stuff like this, it just was so niche, I guess is a good word. I don't know. I don't know what's the right word. Um, but yeah, then Electrician Metrics. I started freelancing when I was about 22, websites, and I was basically bartending at night and selling websites on the side. And I was doing all sorts of freelancing stuff. I was so big on the digital nomad idea of being able to just live anywhere. I did voice acting, I did editing, I did dating profile edits, like all sorts of funny stuff for freelancing gigs. And eventually I realized, hey, if I could just market strictly for electricians, I can do that. And to a certain degree, it kind of worked. I got a few clients, and I had my little presentation. This is from a long time ago. Let me see, when was this actually edited? 2021 was last time I was touching this. Yeah, that makes sense. But right around then is when I was really invested in trying to make this work. And realistically, I found out that this part of the business is what I really don't like, which is the sales part. I don't mind setting up conversations. I don't like the following up and trying to beg people for work. They just, I don't know. It just goes against what I think about. But overall, here's the logo. I really like the logo. I thought the logo was pretty sick. Got it done on Fiverr, super cheap back then, before I was really designing. And I don't even remember where this presentation came from. This template presentation, but I love it. I love this aesthetic. I think this sort of blue purple is just sick. I think it's something I'm always attracted to. I think it's kind of fallen out of fashion though. So I don't know, whatever. Keep pulling up the wrong window. Here we go. Get Smart Group, Electrician Metrics. When 2020 hit, it changed everything because Electrician Metrics was bringing some income in. It was bringing enough to be comfortable alongside a very serious bartending and beverage director position. And it was like the perfect combination of having 20 hours of work with Electrician Metrics and then having 40 to 50 hours of restaurant industry experience. And so that was great because, I'm working anywhere from 50 to 70 hours, but really bringing in a good chunk of change. 2020 hits, everything goes down, right? Electricians are so booked up, they don't know what to do. The last thing they think about is marketing and getting more business. They're thinking about how do they get more employees. They're not thinking about how do I get, more customers. Like that's not the issue. So Electrician Metrics had to die for two reasons. I really didn't enjoy doing the sales side, and I really didn't have many people to sell to anymore. The other thing too is it also canned everything as far as all of the restaurants, right? Everything shut down. My wife and I both lost our jobs. We were both on unemployment. We were just going through it, right? During lockdown, like everybody was. Especially if you're like a millennial and you're watching this, it was a pivotal moment. And so we got engaged, married, and we moved across the country inside of 3 months, right? During that time. We went from being locked down in Pilsen in Chicago to being in Austin, Texas, living a completely different life. So it was a pretty crazy change, and it was an excellent, it was a great change. We love Texas. So I don't couldn't imagine like being anywhere else other than Texas, and it was a great time, and it led me to the GetSmart Group, and the GetSmart Group is just a great company. I think they have, a lot of things going for them. I actually built this website when I first came in. Let's see if we can actually see the old website. Listen, I tried. Okay, I'm on the way back machine. I did my best. It's not happening. Either way, GetSmart Group. I think a super interesting company. Yeah, I worked on Colorado custom body plaque. Looks like this website hasn't been updated basically since I built it and worked on it quite a while ago. Overall, I think it's a okay website. I think I built it well using the technology at the time with Elementor and WordPress, but things have moved since then. So, Wise Digital Partners, I joined in February of last year. And so that's where I just got laid off. And I think is one of the catalysts for deciding to just dig into making content, dig into creating this channel. It's kind of strange to be laid off. I haven't been laid off. I mean, I got fired a couple times from like nonsense jobs or random gigs I did at some point in my early 20s, but like to be laid off because of restructuring is kind of it's a strange feeling. It's a strange feeling. And to basically just go from being on the EOS leadership team, building the entire ClickUp infrastructure, having a huge part in bringing AI to the company, structuring how AI projects are put together, using AI in everything and leading with AI, and then to be restructured, I think in a huge part because of AI, and just going like, hey, we don't necessarily need humans in the loop anymore. And I think in a lot of ways, it's hard for me to talk about Wise without that sort of undertone to it, because it's sort of a strange place to be in, to go from being so influential in a company to no longer being part of that company. And so in a big way, I look at Wise as sort of being led into a hype train that doesn't exist in reality. And I think that that's something that I think I is going to influence how I think through problems as well, because it doesn't matter how you think through things if you're always doing things in private, if you're always holding back and wanting to sort of put your projects under the radar and under the side, you know, that's kind of what happened with Wise, right? Privately, I'm building Jonathan OS architecture. If you're watching this, you're probably not gonna watch this like before my other videos, like maybe, I don't know. But more than likely, you're gonna be watching this because you got interested in Jonathan OS, you got interested in some of my other videos that are coming on AI. You're looking at Obsidian and how do you set stuff up in Obsidian. You're looking at skills inside of Claude code and voice files and how does it influence your whole life and what you're creating. And so, I built this very much in private, right? I built it while I'm still head of project management. At night, I'm working on these projects. I'm handling all these projects. I'm doing ClickUp infrastructure. I'm product managing the latest iteration of a new workflow while then building all my own stuff. And so April hits, end of April. So 2 weeks ago, it's kind of weird to think about. But 2 weeks ago, I get pulled into a room on a random Wednesday. Hey, you'll let go. And it's strange to think about it now because it feels both so recent and so long ago. And I look at what I have to show from it, and it's like this weird situation where you just get cut off from everything you've built. And luckily I'm able to capture some of that work effectively, but I look back now and just go, there's no case studies, there's no thinking during the building, there's no thinking of the process. And I think there was so much value that I could have brought, not just to myself, right, looking back at it, but to you guys, to the Scenius. And so I think had you seen that, had you checked out those thought processes as I was going through the ClickUp build, as I was going through building Obsidian, if you saw how I was looking at the voice files, I think that has such an interesting shift in the way that you might be looking at problems, which might have a shift on the way I look at problems and how I'm using AI and Claude Code to kind of create something that's unique, right? And I don't necessarily think that it's unique. It's core, because ultimately it's just file structures. It's just information, but how the file structure is there is something I picked up from somebody else. What goes into the files and how they go in is something I've created. The skills that are in place, the voice files, that's all sort of unique to me. And in a big way, part of that is something that I want to share with you to work through it together. So I think that's where the value really is. So when this restructuring happened and my role got eliminated, it basically kind of triggered something in my brain to go, well, what's the point? Like what's the next point that I want to make? Is it just applying for jobs? you know, it's important to apply for jobs. I think it's very important. And a huge part of the skills that I've built have to do with automating the job search, improving the job search to the highest degree that I can to make sure I'm as efficient as possible. It's to tracking the job search itself. There's so much that's caught up in the job search, but like that doesn't really provide me anything, because once I land a new job, I'm in the same spot again. It's so show the work. I'm going to come up to it in a second here. I think, yeah, here's the book. It made me rethink about like what I'm creating for the future and what I want to create in a sense of personal brand that's built around who I am and what I'm accomplishing or what I'm not accomplishing, what I'm failing at, right? And that's kind of where part of that is. And this is definitely true. Your calendar opens up, you drop from 20 hours a week of client meetings and internal meetings, creating meetings, leading pretty much all of them, leading all these projects, all these tasks, managing like thousands of tasks. And it just goes from that to nothing. Well, my brain it doesn't turn off. I've got to figure out what the next structure is. And so immediately new skills, get the vault triage going, get the job search chain going. Voice file is just continuously work that so that when Claude produces something and I need to re-put it into my sort of tone and voice, it needs to come out naturally, right? And realistically, it's just bigger. It's broader. It's what I want it to be, right? I don't have to necessarily curate what I'm saying because of an employer or things of that nature, which I think you have to do in a certain degree. But I think about that in my next position because I don't want what I'm creating right now to just be gated by whether or not I actually have a position, right? But anyways, show your work, the book. Boom, there. It's a great book. I love the aesthetics of it. Let me see if I can. It's got a lot of cool hand drawn sort of art on it, and it made me think about the fact that my mentality has always been that geniuses are just born, or they work themselves up to become a genius, and then they're just putting stuff out. Right. The first part was the Scenius part. The second part is just the process, right? The process is what you're showcasing. The product is not. And that kind of made me think about things a little differently because I'm such a perfectionist when it comes to what I'm doing for myself that it's really hard for me not to nail down all the specifics before putting it out into the world and saying, hey, check it out. And that's just the wrong way to look at it because that's not what I digest, right? Day to day. I love watching people work. Like I love watching people do random things like power washing, right? Like people who just power wash driveways. I could watch that all day long, never get bored of it because it's watching them do the work and seeing how they go from totally terrible to all the way clean, right? Cutting grass. Those guys who cut like insane amounts of grass. All that stuff is so interesting because it shows an insight into someone's life and work that I don't have insight into otherwise. And I think that that's probably something that I overthink on my own stuff. And same thing with Rick Rubin's The Creative Act, right? Notice and capture continuously. Publishing is the downstream selection problem, not the source of the work. And so that's really how I want to think about this is just continuous practice, trying to pump out as much of these sorts of essay videos that I can, hopefully on a daily basis. Hopefully you can kind of join me as I walk through some of this stuff and think through a lot of this stuff. But at the end of the day, my goal isn't necessarily to produce an end work. And I don't know if I'll ever get to the end work. It's to just iterate. And that's really my biggest goal. Yeah, the pivot, job search site to brain site. I created jonathanibrahim.com super quick, super quick. I had jonathanibrahim.com as a domain for a couple years now. I kind of thought about making a personal brand more than a couple times. It's something that's always been kind of in the back of my head. And then as I'm starting to kind of catch wind of the reality that there might be a restructuring coming my way at Wise, I put this together really quickly. And it's just basically a resume in design using Claude Code. Turned out pretty good for what it is, but it's super basic and it's a static site on GitHub. And at one point I had started to produce a bigger and deeper website in that same fashion, just writing raw HTML and CSS and using Claude Code. It turned out like pretty decent. I like it. I like the aesthetics of it. I like this sort of teal and whatnot and the sort of monochromatic aesthetic. But, I'll dive into why I decided not to go that route and the new route that I want to go, which is using Webflow and creating just an actual website. And I want to take you on the journey of how I create that website from beginning to end, because I think a lot of you would figure out that that's something you might want to do. And I think this sort of decision point between job search to brand site is really something I think a lot of people are going to think through. Very soon, the personal brand is going to be the only thing that's real. This leaning towards large corporate branding is just becoming so fake at this point, and it's becoming so disingenuous. No one cares anymore. Like, nobody cares. And you see it so vividly in these large corporations that try to put out content, like the McDonald's CEO, this sort of, oh, I'm going to try to be big in corporate, but at the same time, try to put out like honest, realistic content. It's just so diametrically opposed to who they are. And at the same time, individuals have more power than ever to produce content at scale, right? I'm not writing all this. I'm not structuring this because this is all AI produced. And, one of the video ideas I have is just talking about how does AI creation versus human creation, like how does that flow and the economics behind that of value, of human driven value, right? Regardless, kind of on a tangent, job search versus brand site, right? Static. This is like whatever amount of time that I think is valuable versus an actual body of work, right? Trying to create something that matters and is valuable. So I think it's all really interesting. And I think that at the end of the day, I could wait until I have the full website built, until I have 2 or 3 essays written out, until I have videos produced. And at some point that'll work. At another point, it's just not going to work. It's just going to take too long to get to that point. And then by that point, maybe I'm onto something different, right? Realistically, I just need to commit, and that's kind of where show the work comes in, where Rick Rubin comes in. This idea of just continuous capture. Yeah, what it's going to be. If I could do a daily cadence, that'd be absolutely insane. I think that'd be insane. I think that having that daily cadence because of what I'm working on makes sense, but at the same time, it's it's going to be difficult to come up with the right flow. Yeah, specifics over abstraction. Name tools, name numbers, name decisions, iteration in public, direct address, the thing itself, not the explanation of the thing. I hate that. I really hate that on every reel that I watch on so many YouTube channels. People are like, comment this to figure out what GitHub repo this is. When the GitHub repo is in the video, I can just look at the video. And now that you've said that, I don't care anymore about what you're doing or what anything is. Just had you given me the value up front, I would have appreciated it more and respected you more for it. But there's like this always this gamification and, financial sort of overtone to everything that just sucks. And so, yeah, let's just get rid of it. Get rid of this. What am I actually doing day to day and all that? The work is the show. The rest of this essay I think is great. You'll be able to read it on the actual website when it's done. Uh, if you've made it this far, thanks a lot. It's a half hour of me just tangenting on a bunch of random stuff. But if you liked it, if you found value, I appreciate that. And I think, I'm really excited about getting into this habit of producing content. And if you're interested in watching, check it out sometime. See ya.